poll. Let's check. Let me check. All right, so this thing popped up. Let me see the sound, the picture. Beautiful. It all works. Okay. So what am I sharing? Sharing an updated Ghost DAO. An updated Ghost DAO has a surprise for us. That surprise being the dashboard with the new titles. So we do have eCasper, Casper, Backend per eCasper, Ask Casper, Good Morning Mr. UK. So we do have everything. It was miraculously, tirelessly being deployed over the last 2 days by the whole team. So I just got this user interface maybe half an hour ago. There are a couple of tweaks before we can share this with you guys on the marketing launch. So what is the schedule for deployments? Let me open this up. What are we looking at? So we're looking, 1 second. Let me look at the dates. So first of all, before August 30th, you have 4 or 5 days. Those of you who would like to swap your GDAI, please apply for the swap. After that, you won't be able to swap anymore. Reason being is, well, you probably will be, but it's going to be like super challenging and so manual that it's going to be massively delayed. So the new user interface will take over, so you won't be able to access your old tokens from the current user interface. It will still be possible to be done somewhat on the back end, but guys, back end stuff is going to be super complicated. Like it's, well, if running a node is not complex for you, then using smart contracts directly via Etherscan or Blockscout will be a piece of cake. But if running a node is complicated, then user interface swaps, essentially converting everything to GDAI and then applying will be the best. So the swap has officially started 24th of July, 2 days ago. So up until 30th of July, please, please, please apply. So for those of you who will get your GDAIs, well, Ethereum for your GDAIs, great. Those of you who won't, you have to mine, get it, buy, however you want to get it again. So the two other updates that are in the plan, Monday, July 28th, will be the Ghost Light node extension that will go live. I think some of you guys already saw it. Some of you guys can already access it. But wait for the guide. So the guide will be published around that date as well. And then the official redeployment of Ghost DAO is planned for August 4th. So the initial date was July 23rd. So July 23rd, it was live for us, right? Like it was live for the team, but it was not live for you guys. So we essentially gave ourselves another 10 days of testing, or more than 10 days, 12 days for testing just to make sure everything is proper. We are identifying little bugs here and there. Today we'll have a call right after this Ghost community call with the team regarding the gatekeeper, the bridging, and stuff like that. So it's all slowly but surely coming together. So yeah, so prepare yourselves. Any questions on this matter so far? Let me open up the. Oh, we don't have questions. Okay. So it's going to be very, very, very busy, a very busy month, the month of August, essentially. So prepare. We will have to redeploy the entire chain as well. We're redeploying the blockchain ourselves on a Monday. It's going to be just a testing thing, and then starting next week, we are going to be testing internally with the team how the bridge works, how does it interact with the new blockchain, and then everybody will be asked to redeploy their blockchain one more time, the Casper testnet on all the nodes respectively. The reason why the Ghost chain will have to be redeployed is because it needs to now, as a node, listen to the smart contracts and thus validate those cross-chain bridging transactions. So prepare to update, to start updating your nodes maybe in 2 weeks. Besides, he's asking, will this redeployment have any impact on running a node? Will we need to update that? Yeah, so I just responded to the great question. So yeah, so we'll have to change the Ghost DAO. We'll have to change the nodes, the validated nodes. The old Casper is essentially, I think it will be gone. Yes, it will be gone. So in order, after the new redeployment of the blockchain of the Casper testnet, you will have to get your Caspers directly from Ghost DAO and then bridge it. And that's how you become a validator. But at least there's no begging anymore. So, I mean, it's definitely very exciting. I'm kind of, the tone of my voice is more like there's so much stuff to be done. It's crazy, and there's so much management of and responding, like customer user support, right? Whale support, community support that is expected, that I'm just preparing myself for that. Saving any teeny tiny piece of energy we have for that. It's going to be extremely demanding. And that's just a bridge in. On the bridge out, we may need to redeploy the chain as well. Hopefully not. But the DAO hopefully won't need to be redeployed anymore. Right? So, well, at least that's why we did redeploy like the Ghost DAO 2 or 3 times just last 2 days, just to make sure there are no like mini bugs that could impact anything. Inside K is asking, what do we do with the Casper we already earned through the nose? Can we save it in any way? Probably we won't be able to save it in any way. It's just gone. So yeah, so consider it to be gone. You can start distributing it to your friends. All right. Now the reason why it's gone is because the new Casper is going to be essentially we'll have 2 interoperable tokens. The first one is Ghost, the second one is Casper. So the new Casper will become an interoperable token. So when you see some projects say, "Oh, we're interoperable," it has so many different definitions, right? Like, I mean, you can define the terms however you want to define them. Specifically, just to watch the discussion between Aristotle and Plato. Plato was the student of Socrates, and Aristotle was the student of Plato. And then kind of we all believe, oh, Plato is like this philosopher, who really shaped the European civilization, and it's actually not true. Well, some people say it's not true based on the research. It's actually Aristotle that was first found by the European civilization. Then every single time the civilization took approach of Plato, um, shit hit the fan significantly. And then when everybody got back to Aristotle, things progressed. And the reason why is Aristotle, in particular, was defining terms. So A is equal to A plus B is equal to B plus A. Okay, it was deductive and inductive methods of logic that he literally created. So he created, like, everybody's aware that Aristotle formally created, innovated those 2 principles of modern logic that we are still using to the day. So inductive, and then like top, bottom up, essentially. So, and Plato, conversely, was not defining things. So he would be putting like, he would say like, yeah, there's a thing like called formal logic, but there is so much to the world outside of the formal logic. Like A is equal to A, yeah, but sometimes A is not equal to A, depending on how you look at it. So that's how Plato was looking at things. And with Plato in particular, people say, well, like, nuclear physics and whatever, astrophysics came out of Plato because It widened people's horizons in terms of how we think about things, and Plato's logic was able to, like, essentially nonlinear logic was able to bring us there. But Aristotle proponents say, no. It's like without those formal laws, Plato's logic is all BS. Like, let's be specific. So going back to the interoperable, the reason why I started going on the tangent with Aristotle and Plato, we have to bring proper terminology to terms. What the fuck does it mean to be interoperable? So interoperable, oh, it's inter and operable. So if if I create a system that makes Gmail interact with SMS, text messages, oh, now that's interoperable. No. In Web3, interoperable means that you are specifically communicating with different blockchains. And of course, then the interoperability is it decentralized or not decentralized? Because currently, interoperable, lots of wallets are interoperable. But that's not necessarily true because you are communicating with these chains using a database. So that's not exactly interoperable. Interoperable is when a blockchain is interacting with another blockchain, right? So when we say that Casper and Ghost are interoperable tokens, we mean that these tokens are minted by one blockchain, Ghost and Casper respectively, and you can migrate, you can move, you can swap, you can bridge them to other blockchains. So our token, Casper and Ghost, are there for coins, are there for the first truly interoperable coins. That's the first innovation. Think about like innovation, like same thing with Aristotle, like, oh, like inductive and deductive, who cares? No, that's extremely important because people didn't realize how to think 1, 2, 3 steps forward. Now, if you know how to think 3 steps forward and your opponent country or city nation does not know how to think 3 steps forward, you will win. You will inevitably take their resources and monopolize, right? And become a local monopoly, local power. That's what Roman Empire later did. So we have to be very, very like specific on the terms, and that's why we created the glossary, right? Like and bring all these formulas on the blog. That's just to bring proper definitions, like to bring to bring like more specificity to what we're trying to do. So that's the first massive innovation of the Ghost ecosystem, that we created the first truly interoperable token, which is Casper for, well, two tokens, Casper for testnets and Ghost for mainnets. Okay, enough being said here. I would like to more or less. Oh, and going back to Mr. Ajike's question, the reason why the old Casper is gone, will be gone, is because the old Casper is not interoperable, but the new Casper is interoperable. There's no way to swap them, right? So we will have to just like replace them completely. Let me go to the same presentation that we shared on the Wales Wednesdays call. Mr. Ajike, you've been there, so like if it's boring, I apologize in advance. But maybe repetition will be. It's just like I'm really trying to. Uh, Somebody said clarity is power, and when you're trying to describe what Ghost is to somebody who is not familiar with Web3, it is complicated. It's like, oh, they build a bridge, and like, but this bridge connects other blockchains. I remember when this concept came out by, I think it was initiated by Cosmos Ecosystem actually in 2017's ICO. They were like, oh, like we're going to build an interoperable world. And then Bankware tried to make something very similar. Bank is actually an economics term. At least that's what they pitched. But then, of course, they ended up building something different. Maybe they built what they wanted to build, but I think they built completely different. But Cosmos back then was like, oh, we're going to create this like interoperable. Like, that's where the interoperability, I think Cosmos actually originated that term. We're going to bring this like ecosystem of interoperability. Of course, Cosmos did not want to unite Ethereum and Bitcoin together. They just wanted to unite their own ecosystem. Polkadot then went and did the same thing. They essentially just built built a power chain concept where the power chain is like the semi chain, and then you connect these semi chains, power chains with the master chain. But you're not necessarily uniting Ethereum and Polygon together, right? So when let me switch to PowerPoint. But then back in 2017, like I was reading the space and oh, this is blockchain connecting other blockchains. Okay, a cool story, bro. Like, why do you need this? Like, even to me, that back then it was like, I don't know, cool concept, right? There was no TVL, there was no DeFi, there was no reason to build that stuff before. Ethereum was just starting out. There were definitely some smart contracts, but nothing crazy. So back then made not much sense to build that. But Cosmos were looking forward. We have to give it to them. And when we are trying to describe goals to newcomers, same thing. Like if somebody is completely a non-Web3 person, like how can it's possible? Like, okay, we're going to build a blockchain connecting other blockchains, and blockchain is the future. Digital wallet is the future. And then, of course, you can say, well, like this one gentleman, YouTuber, I forgot his username, whatever his account, but he's like, well, the reason why I'm betting big on Bitcoin and Ethereum is because Bitcoin and Ethereum are digital assets, and the current the millennials and Gen Zs, and then I think Generation Alpha, Beta, these generations are going to be heavily digital, so it makes sense to bet on digital, currency, right? So it makes sense, right? Like it's a nice freaking pitch, right? Like it's a nice pitch that is applicable to anybody who's not a Bitcoin believer just to buy $100 of Bitcoin, right? So we need to start creating similar pitches, and for that we need to really distill to the clarity of what we're trying to build. And of course we can say, well, we're building this whole financial ecosystem, right? So I mean, what we're trying to say is like we build a trustless interoperable monetary system. What the fuck does that mean? That every user can validate and monetize. And that is perhaps the easiest explanation for what we're trying to build. But if you're not, an economics person, math person, developer, DeFi, Web3, nothing, it's still complicated. Like, because the reason is most people don't understand, for example, how, and we're going to show in today's presentation, most people don't know how money works. And most people don't care how money works, right? So, and to us, that's bizarre. Like, oh, how can you how can it not matter? But the reason why it doesn't matter to most of us is we know that we're going to be screwed by the government anyways. So therefore, the only answer is money. Like we just have to earn money. Like money heals things. Why? Because we're going to be screwed by the government. So we have to figure out a way how to make money. Because even if you're screwed by the government, our pensions, our savings, etc., as long as we have the skill, the expertise, the connections, the relationships, whatever, to keep producing more money, we'll be always able to buy shelter, provide shelter for ourselves, food for ourselves, etc. And I think that understanding of like complete helplessness, it's learned helplessness. It's actually a psychological term where we know that we're going to be screwed. Uh, Forces us to just focus on what we do best, which is whatever the skill we have, whatever the talent, habit, job we have, career we have, because we know we're going to be screwed. Of course, the proactive society requires every single person to be educated on the matter. There are certain, especially 19th century, 20th century, with the growth of the different ideologies such as communism and socialism and anarchy and capitalism. Well, capitalism is not an ideology really. Feudalism, right? Like they required a super proactive core group of people. There were different manifestos. Like we do know about the uh, Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. Well, actually, Friedrich Engels, if I'm not mistaken. But to my surprise, there was also a similar Anarchy Manifesto. In fact, that manifesto was so secretive, like it was only passed to select few, which inspired me potentially to build something similar, where if a person qualifies based on, I don't know, some type of GML structure, like they get this secret message, secret ticket of knowledge of what needs to be followed. But that secret Anarchy Manifesto, I'm not going to share the details, but it was forcing to be even more proactive. Like it was crazily proactive in its message. And the fact of this proactivity is you need to understand how the political system works. You need to understand how the legal system works. You need to understand how money works. If you ask an average person on the street how money works, most people won't know. If you ask me how money works, I won't know. If you ask a Federal Reserve Powell, right now, how the money works, I don't think he'll be able to properly explain it to you. The fucking guy's a lawyer. The fact that he's a head of Fed doesn't mean anything anymore. Like the CEOs, they don't know shit in most cases. Like, they have no fucking clue. They do have access to elites, at least tell them what to do, and that's it. They don't have any like special talent or knowledge in most cases. That's the state of the affairs. And we need to still try to understand how the system works, but we need to kind of realize that most people don't have time. Most people just don't want to do this anymore, right? They just want to focus on making more money. That's the only remedy, and that's correct. So then the question is, how do we distill the message from a super complicated stuff to something easy? And maybe by presentations like this, we are going to start kind of getting it. So without further ado, let me just jump into it. So I think um, the goal shall be described. I was describing this to some people who are not Web3 at all recently, like maybe last week. I think maybe the best explanation is, imagine if gold could produce more gold. Maybe that is what we do. I mean, maybe that is the explanation. Like, we don't go for like this, deflationary asset produce more deflationary asset, which is what it is, right? But what if silver could produce more silver and retain its properties of, of silver, right? So retain the properties of being liquid, of being highly desirable, of being easy to store, right? Fungible and essentially still be a reserve asset, right? Which preserves its value. So I think that's what we do. So it's Ghost can finally produce a reserve asset which pays dividends in reserve assets. So gold that you can essentially do a little bit work on, not much, and then you come in tomorrow and that gold just went ahead and produced more gold. I think that's what we have. So if this is now, it's a super novel concept because you don't have it. So I will explain kind of how we got to this conclusion, but overall, if we can build the whole nation, the whole country around this concept, the whole decentralized digital community, that community can now earn money. That community now can sustain itself, and thus this community can potentially strive. And that's not possible with Bitcoin. That's not possible with Ethereum. Because the biggest question I had, how are we different from Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin is already so fucking great. How are we different? Are we 10x better than Bitcoin? And I think we are. We just need to draw these parallels properly, but Bitcoin is a reserve asset. It does not produce more Bitcoins. Bitcoin is a perfect store of value for your savings, right? So no, not a financial advice, do it at your own risk. But Bitcoin does not give you cash flow, right? So, and Ghost can be both a store of value and give you cash flow at the same time. And it's not part of the same. It's not like, oh, Ghost chain does that and then Ghost DAO does that. No. The whole entire ecosystem, if you a proper player, proper validator, you'll be able to have your reserve asset that produces more reserve assets. And maybe that is the message how we attract more people to the project with a simple explanation who are not Web3. Yeah. So how do we get there? So again, let's begin. I asked this question to the whales. If you guys know the answer, I mean, if you remember the answer, you can put the answer in the chat. But let me just spend 30 seconds on each question. Which organization in the world do you think has the largest revenue? Of course, we think NVIDIA of the world, or Microsoft, or Apple. Those are organizations with the largest revenue in the world. So it give you guys a little bit of a picking game. Definitely put your versions. Even if you disagree, put your opinions in the chat. But so this is the top 10 companies in the world with the largest revenue. And what we have is we have Walmart as number one. Surprisingly, where the hell is NVIDIA? NVIDIA is not even top 10 talking about AI. NVIDIA definitely grew, and maybe it will become something, right? By the way, what the fuck is Facebook here? Oh, Tesla. I don't see it anywhere. Oh no. How is that possible? We see Apple. But what's interesting, Walmart is number one. Amazon, number two. Now, Saudi Aramco, if I'm pronouncing correctly. So this is Saudi Arabia largest company. They wanted to become the company with largest revenue, with largest market capitalization before Apple took over, and then Nvidia now took over. But this is a national company of Saudi Arabia. So, like, this is not a company. This is a country. It's a country-based business, right? It's like saying, oh, let's put FBI on, I don't know, somewhere, CIA, right? Like, why not? Or let's put like a, like postal office, right? Like, so it's right there, right? Now, this one is Chinese, if I'm not mistaken. Sinopac or whatever, Chinese. So it's also, this is a Chinese national company. So it's not a company, it's a country, right? It's a country thing. Berkshire, the big question is Berkshire, yeah, it's a private company. Is it really a private company? I mean, his dad was a senator. Like, is it really a private company? Like, let's ask questions. Let's start asking questions, guys. United Health, after what happened to COVID, is that a private organization? I don't know. Apple is obviously genius of Apple. Yeah, self-made. I mean, absolutely. At some point, it was self-made when they were in the garage. But then when big money flooded, right, and now took over the whole company to the point where the CEO was, like, how come the CEO Steve Jobs was exed, right? Was canned from his own company, right? Like, was that his own company? That's a question we should be asking. And then when the government fucked it up, he came back and revolutionized it, and then the government fucked it up again. No innovation. PetroChina speaks for itself. It's a Chinese company. This is healthcare again, right? So look at this. Like, 2 out of 10 is healthcare. Interesting. And what? Saudi Arabia, China. That's 3. 3 out of 10 are definitely government owned, right? And then we have Google. Okay. And also Google, independent media. Definitely independent, of course. Very independent. The most independent. Doesn't collect any fucking data, does not pitch to attach your phone number so it can track you, does not listen to you while you're in your house, and then you say something, and then the next day, the next hour, they start pitching you those ads that you just mentioned. Like you mentioned, oh, would be nice to watch Batman, and then oh, Batman versus who would have won, like Batman or Superman, and then in the next hour you will see ads inviting you to watch a Batman movie or buy a whatever subscription with Superman. Yeah, Google must be independent. So of course, the largest organization so far publicly available data is United States of America with almost $5 trillion of annual revenue from taxpayers, and then we have China right there, then we have Germany right there, then we also have Japan, we have India, right? So we have the giants, we have Brazil, we have Russia, we have Saudi Arabia, right? Like we have the Middle East. So this is publicly available information. If somebody would put a cartel out of Mexico, that cartel out of Mexico would probably also be, top 5, right? Or cartel out of Colombia, or cartel out of Honduras, or right in jungles of, I don't know, Bolivia, like stuff like that. If you also take unauthorized groups out of the, that typically have nothing against it, but have been typically Muslim in nature, I cannot name these groups, otherwise I'll probably be banned by YouTube, but you know what I mean. They're probably going to be also top 10, trading, weaponry and stuff. Probably going to be, top 5, top 10. So this is just legal stuff, illegally publicly available information. So of course, it's not the companies, it's the governments. But it goes even more interesting. What's the largest real estate holding entity in the world? Which organization owns the most real estate? So I was asked this question about 15 years ago, and the most popular answer was McDonald's. Because back then it was already known that the business of McDonald's is not burgers but real estate. That's kind of that's the pivot. So through franchises, right? So every single, like, Domino Pizzas has its own business model, and then Burger King has its own business model, and McDonald's has its own business model. So there are different business models behind these successful ventures. But the largest, my response was actually Islam organization. And then we have these, official official holding companies, China Evergrande Group that went bust. Are they bankrupt or not? I'm not sure, but the largest entity, the largest holding in the world. So the top 3, Asia, and then we have North America and Asia again. So between North America and Asia, But when you say search for the religious organizations, turns out to be the Holy See by Vatican, the worth billion, like you see, like the worth in billions of dollars. Say the Church of Jesus Christ here has 300 billion worth of real estate, compared to say the largest a real estate entity here, 367 billion, so not far away. But for Holy See Vatican, the Wikipedia page says incalculable. Like it's so fucking much. It's impossible to count how much assets are controlled by the Catholic Church. It's just impossible. Because it's like all these offshore accounts, the Panama Papers. Like it's just incalculable, guys. Incalculable. So the Catholic Church. So again, interesting, right? So the largest organization that produces the most revenue is not a company, it's a country. It's the United States of America. The largest entity that owns the most real estate, it's not a country, it's an organization. It's a Holy See. We're going to kind of cover the Holy See down the road today. Then, organization with the largest, I'm not even saying with the largest, like, how to frame the question, largest banking power, like the biggest, the whatever, the most, the hugest, I don't know what to say. The organization with the most, probably, right, banking power. So we believe the response on Wales were the Federal Reserve, maybe the Central Bank of China, Central Bank of Japan, right? Maybe the ECB, European Central Bank, maybe Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, right? The cartel of investment banks. But it's the BIS, Bank of International Settlements, and it is, when you Google it up, again, this answer may be wrong, right? So, it's a subjective type of answer, but based on my understanding, it is BIS. They're, I think, domicile headquartered in Switzerland. So when you Google them up, like what is BIS, it will tell you it's a bank for central banks. Imagine, bank for central banks. When you start being curious to find out how exactly the central bank heads of different countries being hired, being recruited, you will find out that the American lobby from the central bank, from the Federal Reserve, have significant influence over the central banker of Brazil, over the central banker of Europe, over the central banker of, I don't know, of like, I don't know, right? Like any African nation, right? Or Latin American nation. So, and then the BIS is above it. The BIS is above it. And what the fuck is BIS? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So nobody can audit the Federal Reserve, and nobody can audit the BIS. Yet, when you look at the notionals of the derivatives, right? So OTC derivatives, that's over-the-counter derivatives. Those are the type of derivatives that are not traded on the market. So I call Mr. IDK and says, Mr. IDK, good day to you, sir. How about we play some swaps? How about we play some interest rate swaps today? And Mr. IDK tells me, absolutely, let's go. So boom, we just made an OTC transaction. So it's not well, it could be recorded on the book. It should be recorded on the books, but it's OTC. It's not it's not like very much, well, it's somewhat regulated by the BIS, but it doesn't have to be regulated, right? So let's look at the sizes here. So FX derivatives, foreign exchange derivatives, grew by 10% year over year to reach 130 trillion. To give you an idea, 130 trillion, how is it big or not? So the GDP of the world today is around 100 trillion, of the whole world, $100 trillion a year. So FX derivatives, so the notional value of all the derivatives, who owns whom, grew to $130 trillion. So which encompasses more than the entire GDP of the whole world. Those are some fucking stamps. Like it's like Excel fucking spreadsheet, rows of data worth 130 trillion. Like it's not like oil production. It's not factory. It's not labor. It's some fucking stamps. It's some like money printing press fucking Excel entries, right? That's just FX derivatives. Then we have credit derivatives. That's just 10 trillion. Okay, not a big deal. Then we have the most important ones, interest rate derivatives. They always the largest section, 560 trillion. So when you add 160 trillion, 130 trillion, that's already 700 trillion. That's 7 times the GDP of the world. And the GDP of the world is also funnily calculated, right? So when you try to look how it's calculated, like to describe the healthiness of the economy, it's also, quite funky. It's also quite massively inflated. So you can just imagine, the size controlled and regulated by the BIS. And you've never heard about this bank. you probably have never heard, like, unless you work on Wall Street or interested in economics, you've never heard about this organization ever. So the whole point is, the most powerful organizations out there, those are, at least you can find the websites of these. I don't think you can find the website of cartel, the largest cartel of Mexico, close to the border of the, I don't know, Tijuana, like whatever, whatever, like, whatever the state, the Federation of Mexico is covered by that cartel. I don't think you'll be able to find a website of that, right? So those are publicly available organizations. The whole point is, the most powerful organizations are not what we think they are. It's not the Google. It's the United States of America. It's not, the Burger King. It's the Holy See, the Catholic Church. It's not the Goldman Sachs. It's not J.P. Morgan. It is the or Societe Generale, right? It's the BIS, and it just gives a nice perception, kind of nice insight of what we could become with Ghost. We don't have to, be, the number one XRP, whatever, like Tether, Circle. No, we just have to be there as a real organization, making real revenue. There's massive, massive, massive opportunity here. And instead of us trying to disrupt Web3, kind of an idea, it's a very sneaky idea. It's a very, opportunistic type of idea, but create government as a service, right? So you want to be part of our government, fine, pay a fee and become a citizen. You don't like our government anymore, stop paying your monthly subscription, and that's it. You're no longer our citizen. It's fine. Government as a service also nicely can be abbreviated as Ghost as a service, right? So same gas, gas, and gas like a gas as a freaking blockchain gas fee. No pun intended. It was completely. I just saw it myself. That gas stands for gas. Okay, so instead of building a project or building even a movement, like, we should be building a digital nation, because we do have a possibility of earning our citizens income in decentralized way. So this is how have always been seeing it myself. My personal idea about building anything digital as a nation was always like, okay, cool. We have this territorial state situation with North America and South America, and then we have Africa and Eurasia and Australia. So we do have these continents, but given the fact that we have this communication tool of the internet, we can, and also the payment tool powered by blockchain, now we can build a parallel layer. The parallel layer, it will be on top of the territories, and it will be its own country. Why can't we do that with its own rules? And these rules could be programmatic or not, doesn't matter, or governance based, but we can absolutely do it. It's just in parallel. So like, imagine, like, it's a different dimension, right? So we have this first floor that's territories, the mountains and cities and whatever, and borders. Then we have the second layer, and the second layer is just purely digital, and that's where we operate. And that has always been my kind of how I saw it, like in my head, how I would visualize it. So then the question is it possible or not? Have anybody built something similar already, or this is just a fantasy and it's just like another hopium type of model? But the thing is, it does exist. And those two organizations that I'm going to share with you today, those are just publicly known. How many organizations like this we've never heard about? Thousands. I wouldn't say hundreds, probably thousands. And they're super, super duper famous, and they just don't have officiality behind it, but they're famous and super powerful. So the first one is SMOM, Sovereign Military Order of Malta. So those Templiers, the knights that have been spreading the church and protecting Jerusalem, and like all these movies, and the movie with Tom Hanks about the Da Vinci, the Mona Lisa, and like all the whatever the thing, I forgot the name of the movie, but essentially I think he was hanging out with the offspring of the SMOM people. So the status of that organization that's important is it's a non-territorial sovereign entity under international law. So it's recognized by the international law, and it does have diplomatic relationships with 100 countries. And that's exactly what I think we should be kind of striving to achieve. So our nation, Should not be, oh, let's like find this island in some fucking, I don't know, in some I don't know, Pacific Ocean waters, and it's not really claimed by anybody. Let's like claim it and let's like build a nation there. Okay, cool. When the military comes over, they'll fuck you up. They'll take all the, all the real estate. They'll essentially, make you obedient to their laws. Like, I don't know, local Indonesia, Australia, New Zealand will come over and take you. And that's why, that's the biggest reason, that's the biggest, I think, barrier that is hard to breach by, the likes of Vanuatu, and then there's some, international waters of Panama, and there are some islands, because you have zero protection. If you are a country, you need to protect yourself. How do you protect yourself? Well, if you are digital, you don't need to protect yourself because you're digital, especially if you're also anonymous. There's not much to protect. Like nobody, like the hardest part of any attack is to identify whom to attack. If it's difficult to identify whom to attack, you just made the task extremely freaking difficult for those who want to attack you. I'm not talking about hackers. I'm talking about soldiers. I'm talking about military. Right? So if you're international, they cannot attack you. I mean, they could try to. I mean, if you're stupid and uncover who you are, absolutely. I mean, it's super easy for them then to get you. But if you are anonymous, especially if you are part of the anonymous organization, which is global, how can they take you? Like, unless you reveal yourself, I mean, that's going to be challenging. Of course, they can hunt on the individual users, but just be more careful and just just follow the general anonymous privacy type of principles, and you should be fine. And then of course, just like with the first rule of Fight Club, do not talk about Fight Club. Second rule of Fight Club, do not talk about Fight Club. Right? Like Fight Club grew beyond based on the book, at least based on the movies as well. Like grew pretty fast, and to the point where the members of Fight Club started, again, based on the imagination of the, Tyler Durden's, whatever that guy. So they took all the basic kind of jobs, right? Like they kind of the people who would do the jobs, servicing, the elites, they would be part of that club, and that's how that club would, like, since they have so much information about the elites would have to enable for the Fight Club organization to exist, because otherwise the Fight Club members can blackmail them, can can literally threaten their lives of the elites. Like it's a very interesting concept. As long as, like, you have to be powerful, like just like Nietzsche said, like everything is about power. Like the powerful always wins, right? So we have to become a powerful organization, and that way other entities will be, including governments, will have to be communicating with us. And the reason why SMOM is such a powerful organization, I think they have access to, probably through, churches and stuff, to, to the most powerful people. The Abstinence Island, I think, was somewhat potentially curated by these organizations to create blackmail information, and that's how you control stuff, right? Like, it is how it is, right? But nonetheless, SMM does have relations with 100 countries. They have their own passports, which I'm pretty sure also recognized, and they do have an observer status at the United Nations, which is huge. A much bigger organization is the Holy See, the one that is controlling all the real estate. Status: governing entity of the Catholic Church, Buyakasha, operates as a non-territorial sovereign entity under international law as well. Diplomatic relations with 180 countries. Boom. All right, so and kind of, if you are a communicator, presidents, if you have access to people, right? Presidents and the blue and the deep states of every single nation can communicate to other nations via Holy See. Sometimes you see this in, like, say, Olympic, like FIFA, right? Like like, the football, the soccer. Like, why do, is it that big? No, not really. It's just through soccer you are able to create essentially the communication platform for politicians to communicate, right? And then politicians are paying the dues to the FIFA, and FIFA, is, yeah, we're doing soccer, we're doing football, like we're doing sports, like, meaning we are open to every country, like sanctioned or not sanctioned, doesn't matter. But in reality, they're just a communication platform. Lots of people don't realize that, right? So, the sports, the athleticism, like that's a secondary thing. It's really the primary thing is the communication type of platform for the politicians to resolve certain issues, certain situations. And diplomatic relations with 180 countries means that 180 countries recognize the Holy See organization. So imagine going to Brazil's embassy and giving a passport, because they have passports, and going to giving a passport and saying, hey, here's a special passport, or boarding a plane. Hey, I have a Holy See passport. It probably has some like gold color, I don't know, and it has like visa-free entry everywhere, and you can stay in any country as long as you want, as long as you report to, I don't know, to the Foreign Ministry of Affairs in, I don't know, in Belgium. I don't know, right? Like it's a cool situation. Like it's a very interesting position to be in. Now, how can Ghost can possibly get there? Well, power, money, right? Like money and power. So it's possible if we are able to earn enough the bridging fees, and then those bridging fees are, invested to propagate certain types of relationships with certain types of nations. We can start with El Salvador. We can start with Argentina. We can start with, Vanuatu. We can start with the smaller states first. Establish those relationships, become beneficial, become the technical force beyond innovating, building digital governments like they've built in Estonia, but build that in El Salvador on behalf of Ghost. Become a hacker resistant type of force that will protect the nation against. Like, we have to become useful, but for the useful, to become useful, we have to have enough funds. And the problem with Bitcoin currently is absolutely you are a reserve currency, you grow, but you need to generate some, well, not passive income necessarily, but some type of cash flow. And Bitcoin ecosystem does not produce the cash flow. It's a different beast. The Bitcoin is just a reserve asset, right? So same thing with Ethereum, it's just a reserve asset. Ghost can actually produce that cash flow. If you have enough cash flow, we can then lobby different relationships. And that's how I see it. And that's why it becomes very, very interesting. Like, and then the question is like, how are we different from Layer Zero? How are we different from Exceler? Well, Exceler and Layer Zero are not benefiting from growth. The whole point of a properly built Web3 ecosystem is that it benefits from growth. Exceler will not benefit from growth. Why not? It will. Of course it won't. Because if you can onboard thousands and thousands of validators, Exceler's ecosystem just won't be able to function because it's built for 70 validators, and that's it. If you onboard 80, the system will become slower. With Ghost, it's the other way around. Yes, it's more difficult to build, but the more validators you onboard, the more trustworthy the ecosystem becomes. The more developers we have within the ecosystem that make money with Ghost, and they're like-minded. They have similar views for the free economy, for potentially libertarian anarchy type of views, and it's easy for us to organize mini communities within a Ghost community and then go ahead and lobby certain relationships. So that is how we see it. And it's a massive difference again from the Laser and XLRs, which are just completely not built for that. And it's a nice bonus compared to other systems such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. So the idea here is that if you're gonna split every single nation between essentially, like if you're gonna say, okay, this country is capitalistic, this country is socialistic. In reality, most countries are actually in the camp of interventionism. So it's not pure capitalism. And then instead of saying, "Oh, this country is is managed by a dictator, like I don't know, China, right, or whatever," and then or like but U.S. and Canada we have massive and UK we have democracies. In reality, it's not democracy; it's just poly-elites, like poly-elitism. I'm not sure if that's a proper term. I think I created it, but I mean, I'm happy to take a more known terms instead, so they're more recognizable. There's no point to be creative here. But essentially, kind of how I see it is dictators are just mono-elitism. There's no one dictator who just manages everything. You have, the dictator manages everything because he or she, or typically he, pays enough dues to the military. So he bribed all the generals. So generals are incentivized to make sure that military and the police are in line with the general direction of the dictator. Same thing applies to courts, right? So one person cannot possibly manage millions of people. It's the entire elite. It's just mono elite, one elite that manages everything. Same thing in democracy. There's no such thing as democracy. It's just poly elites, many elites who are fighting. How many? Like, how many is many? Oh, if you think it's 50, it's probably not. It's probably 5, probably 3, right? 3 different elites, and with like many sub elites, of course, but like 2 or 3 most powerful ones. In the U.S., that's say the elite behind the Republican Party and behind the Democratic Party. There's a slow elite coming out of the Libertarian Party, and of course, many elites. There's another elite that's coming out of the deep state, the CIA and FBI. Like, they support whoever. They don't fucking care about the politics, as far as like, oh, let's call this that or call that that. Like, let's call them Republicans. No, they're just doing their own things. So that's its own elite, and perhaps the most powerful elite in most countries, including the United States of America. So, but now, what about the people and different authors, including authors on and influencers on anarchy and actual socialism? They've been saying, let's give power to the people. Let's see how that transgression, how that conversion could take place. The reality of the situation is this: the more I'm familiarizing myself with the works, the more I'm realizing that it's impossible to help 100% of people. Like, it's just not for everybody. There's nothing wrong with being passive and just going with the flow. However, some books say 5%, maybe it's 10% of people who are passionaries, who are kind of passionate enough to figure stuff out and decide for themselves. And that is our type of people, right? So we're not appealing for like, oh, let's like appeal to 100% of the population. Wrong. 100% of the population will be living under the management of a country, of a nation. We'll be paying the tax. We'll be freaking serving in the military if needed. We'll be retiring after whatever the legal age of retirement. Like, that is the whole process, right? So that is perhaps the 90% of the people. Is it sad to realize or not? Maybe, but that's the reality. We should be appealing for the 5-10% of the most active people, right? So the proactive people. Of course, from those 5 to 10% of people, some of these people are part of the elites, so they'll not switch out. Like, why would they switch out? But then there's a fraction of those 5 to 10% of people who are proactive enough and who want change, who want different, and that is our audience. So our audience is not 100% of people. No way. Absolutely no. Maybe our audience is 1 to 2% of people, right? So instead of going for 8 billion, let's assume we're going for 0.1%, which is what? How much is that? 8 billion divided by 1,000, right? So it's 8 million people. It's a pretty cozy type of cluster, if I'm not mistaken. Is it 8 million? Maybe. But you got the point, right? So 8 million is still a lot of fucking people. It's a lot of fucking people who want change. So that is the this section here, the column of people, and the kind of capitalism, we don't see it. So what's the difference in capitalism and interventionism? Every single country that requires certain type of rules and regulations to build a house is not capitalistic in nature. They can explain it however they want. They can say, well, we care for your safety. That's why you have to, again, only build this building in that specific, based on the zoning rule. And, you have to have this license and that license. The plumber has to follow that specific, whatever, code of conduct. And then, you have to, based on the fire department, whatever rules, you have to build your doors, that type of, distance from out, like whatever, like all these rules, right? The fact of the matter is, these rules are created to benefit the elites. Imagine how these rules were created. So they sell it to us like the rules are created for your own safety, because there have been so many incidents and so many accidents when the rules were not followed. And because of that, because we are, the ones to resolve it as government, we want to avoid it. Absolutely fine. Now, give me statistics of how many accidents actually happened due to misconduct versus how much money you actually made by charging for the licenses, right? Like getting the proper contracts to the proper type of subcontractors and stuff like that. So when you try to actually split it by the money, by the dollar, like, they try to follow the dollar, say, hey, let's follow the bad guys, let's follow the dollar. Let's also follow them, use their own rule against them. Let's follow their dollars. Like, how come, every single politician, when he or she, like, how come, like, Obama, like, well, nothing against him, how come, like, he didn't even have enough money to pay for his, college tuition, right, when he became president? All of a sudden now he's a multimillionaire. How come? Well, because he probably is a very good book writer. Come on. Come on. Like, let's be real, guys. Like, let's be fucking real. Well, because he probably gives amazing lectures, and every single lecture, for whatever reason, pays him $500,000, right? Because his lecture is so fucking valuable. Come on. Of course, they pay him for the connections he has, right? Like, well, because he became such a great person after becoming a president. But if you notice, every single, outside of actually Trump, every single president in the U.S. became richer after his term. Let that sink in. Every single president in the US, except for Trump, became richer after he took office. And that same, well, we have that statistics in the US. I'm pretty sure it's the same thing in every, and that's US, the most democratic country, one of the most democratic countries in the world. Imagine what happens in the likes of, I don't know, Brazil. Again, nothing against it. In the likes of, I don't know, Montenegro, in the likes of Vanuatu, right? In the likes of Japan. Let's just think about it. Let's follow the dollar. So the fact of the matter is, we do not have capitalistic societies. We have interventionist societies where the governments, through poly elites or mono elites, are resolving their issues. And we have socialistic countries where the nations themselves own significant portion of properties and control the cash flows. We have virtually zero, probably none. Like, again, some people say Switzerland, and maybe that is the example. Very few capitalistic nations, maybe none, and none of them are pro people. They're either monoliths, dictatorships, or democracies, described as republics or federations or whatever. But they're still just poly elites. If you don't believe it, try to become a president of the United States. Try to become a president. Try to nominate yourself to become elected in any office, municipal office or city office or state office or country in your nation, and give yourself 5 years and see how well you're going to do. You're probably going to fail. So if there's now why? Because say your country is for the people. Well, no, it's not. It's for the elites, right? So kind of the angle, the edge that we could develop with Ghost is we could build a truly capitalistic community, and that's what Bitcoin and Ethereum is trying to do for the people, right? So let's quickly quickly go through this, like maybe like another 5 more minutes. Is the biggest caveat that Bitcoin is not able to resolve today. Again, we will never criticize Bitcoin. Bitcoin has its own purpose. Is net worth versus cash flow. That is perhaps the biggest kind of argument here. So net worth, Bitcoin can do. But cash flow, you cannot earn cash flow with Bitcoin. You can say, well, no, I can sell some Bitcoins and buy mining machines and then mine Bitcoins. Yes, you can. That's a cash flow. However, that's not a cash flow from you holding Bitcoins. That's a cash flow from you selling your Bitcoins, so like essentially get your net worth and then reinvesting your net worth into a business of mining, right? So you're not just holding your Bitcoins passively to some extent, and then those Bitcoins generate you some cash flow every single year. No, they increase your net worth every year, right? Hopefully, but they don't give you cash flow every month, and that's the biggest difference. That's the biggest advantage of the Ghost. So, kind of the biggest thing about those theorists, the reason why we don't see that many libertarian or no libertarian, kind of like quasi communities, whether digital or not, in the world is. The theory has been described, and we need to dive into the theory, but that's 90% of the problem. But the 10%, the most important 10% of the implementation is not covered. And that's what Ghost can fit in. Like those 10% could be hopefully resolved by Ghost. So let me quickly kind of go through this one slide. That's the last slide for the day. Hopefully that was kind of somewhat interesting. So with Bitcoin, we do have deflationary supply, and that is perfect for net worth. Now, Ethereum does have inflationary supply. So every single time 4%, or I think it's like 3 or 4% of Ethereum gets minted every single year, that Ethereum is not backed by anything. So if you are staking Ethereum, then you're getting your 4% back. In that case, you are well, I wouldn't say deflationary, you're just neutral. But if you're not staking your Ethereum, then you're inflationary. Now, if you're staking your Ethereum, you are still able to somewhat maintain your net worth. Okay. But by default, Ethereum is not deflationary. It's actually inflationary. Now, Uniswap and both Bitcoin and Ethereum do not give you income. They only give you net worth. They don't not give you cash flow. Now, Uniswap, while it's not inflationary supply, it has nothing to do with this. It's more like a kind of like a business type of thing, right? It doesn't really give you net worth, but if you are a liquidity provider for Uniswap, then you can kind of earn income, right? So let's let's go Uniswap V2. Let's go for eGhost and DAI pair. One of the whales suggested that's like a good example, and that is a good example, but with a caveat. So you stake your DAI and eGhost. Okay, cool. You're earning your DEX fees as a liquidity provider. However, if impermanent loss goes against you, you will actually lose. So while it's also an income, it's also a loss, right? So it's like if the idea is, okay, let me take my family. I have, I don't know, 5 kids. I have a wife, beautiful wife. I have my grandparents, right? And maybe some, brothers, sisters, siblings, whatever, and their families. Let us, like all of us, like as a commune, like 20, 30 people, let all of us say, you know what, screw that. Let us rescind U.S. citizenship, Canadian citizenship, go to Cyprus, go to Vanuatu, go to, I don't know, Montenegro, go to one of those, El Salvador, live there, Panama, Honduras, Costa Rica, right, Ecuador, like so many different places where we can go and live there as a commune. And then the question is, how can you make money? Well, I'll be working as what? As a farmer? Oh, for farmer in Honduras, you probably need to get, similar, regulatory licenses and stuff, right? You can't just grow crop in Italy, right? Like, for example, like if you decide to go to Sicily, like probably not. Probably have to comply with all the local laws. Then the question is, how can you earn money? Well, you say, well, I just have Bitcoin with me. Okay, cool, but that's your net worth. How, like, if you sell in a growing asset, that's not a good idea, right? It's like, you cashing out your net worth. It's the same thing as saying, like, I have an apartment. Apartment is growing in value in the center of New York. Why would you fucking sell it? Well, because I need to eat. Yeah, so if you want to eat, get a job, but keep the apartment. Like, don't sell the appreciating asset. Same thing here. Don't sell Bitcoins. It's an appreciating asset. So then if that community of 20 people goes to Costa Rica and decides to pay themselves, like earn money by providing liquidity on Uniswap, that's a pretty bad fucking idea. Why? Because you can actually lose money, right? Because if the pair moves in one direction or the other direction, the impermanent loss will overshadow any DEX fees that you earned in that specific month or quarter or whatever. So it's challenging. So that that idea, that dream of leaving the controlled government and surviving by yourself, with a pretty good lifestyle, is impossible with Uniswap. It's highly, highly risky. And that's where Ghost comes in, because the supply of Ghost coin itself is deflationary. Why is that the case? eGhost is inflationary, as Ghost is inflationary, but because of the index is always increasing because of the APY. The Ghost token then is a deflationary asset. It's more difficult to get Ghost token with every single 8 hours, it's way more difficult to get Ghost token than the previous 8 hours. So thus Ghost token is deflationary, and therefore Ghost coin is also deflationary. But the Ghost token or Ghost coin, if you are a validator or a nominator, even if you don't have a computer, you can just nominate your Ghost coins. So you essentially have your savings, you put them into Ghost coins, and then you don't want to run validated notes. You just nominated somebody. Like I don't want to run my own notes. I just nominated Mr. IDK, and Mr. IDK now is my validator. So he keeps 10% of the profits, and then the 90% of the profits go to me. What are the profits? The profits are not from speculation. The profits are from the bridging fees. Bridging fees is actual revenue, right? So it's a decentralized business. Like, think about this. It's a decentralized business where bridging fee is a source of revenue. That revenue goes in the form of newly minted Ghost coins, which is deflationary in nature. So you have a deflationary Ghost coin that generates deflationary dividends. And that's why we may bridge that 10% of the implementation gap that libertarian communities globally were not able to bridge so far. Okay, I'll pause here. Thank you so much. Appreciate your participation. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.